My name is Jesse Lavoie, and I'm running a PTSD awareness campaign with the help of Namaste Technologies. I'm here today with Matthew Kahl. How are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you, Jesse?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Sure thing.
You mind telling us a little bit about yourself, Matt?
Yeah. So my name's Matt Kahl. I'm an infantry veteran, 11 Bravo, U.S. Army, 101st Airborne, for about 5, 6 years or so. It was March of 2007 to December of 2011, and had two deployments and one medevac during that period of time. I actually got out of the service with a lot of injuries, and I have used cannabis and other plant medicines in order to try to heal myself, and founded an organization in order to promote those same interests among other vets and among the general populace. Tell you the truth, there's a lot of PTSD in the general populace too. That's always overlooked.
And I understand you're a part of the organization Veterans for Natural Rights.
Yeah, I founded Veterans for Natural Rights when I first met Sue Sisley, and I started lobbying with her on PTSD issues, scientific freedom issues, and eventually just general freedom issues. We've lobbied on a lot of different issues, trying to dismantle all the various different aspects of the drug war. The drug war is possibly the greatest infringement on civil liberties in the history of our nation. And as an organization dedicated to the natural rights of man, um, we stand up to defend these.
Sounds like a very interesting organization. What are some of the latest things your organization has done?
Uh, just this year, we passed. Well, we helped pass. We played a small part in it. There was a team of people that pushed through cannabis for PTSD here in Colorado. And back when I first actually met Sue Sisley in December of 2014, that's when I first started out. And she was actually seeking $2.1 million from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment for her landmark study. It's triple blind, the highest clinical stringency, and it's going to examine how three different cannabis products affect PTSD in veterans. And she was seeking that money from the CDPHE, and uh, that's where I sort of first got my start. And I came out of the basement and the isolation of my own PTSD. And later on that same year, we went to Washington, D.C. We lobbied on the first terrorist bill. Unfortunately, I didn't pass. Um, at the same time, though, we actually we went and started talking to the ONDCP, the White House ONDCP, and during that meeting, actually, was the first time I ever pulled a stunt that some people have called the pill dropped, heard round the world. And that's just I have a collection of a lot of the old prescriptions I was on, and sometimes during lobbying efforts, just to show legislators exactly what the problem is, because they don't have really a good understanding of what we go through. And a lot of times, if you show them a giant bag of medicine bottles, they're shocked. They're shocked and amazed that anybody could go through that, and especially when you dump out a significant quantity in front of them and say, "Hey, listen, this is what you give up when you try medical cannabis." It's a powerful statement, and um, that's really when I came up with the idea and I started pulling that stunt. um, and luckily, I think that what we did there in DC that March of 2015 it got the Public Health Service review process changed for scientific clinical trials in the United States, and it loosened up some of the strictures in order to get Sue Sisley's study underway.
How far along is her study at the moment?
She's actually just beginning, believe it or not. After we went through all that, she still had a bunch of hoops to jump through. There was we got the $2.1 million right off the bat, in December 2014. And then after that, the public health review process that was changed or modified slightly by what we did there. But she still had to actually procure the marijuana from NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, and they're the only legitimate source of clinical quality marijuana in the United States. And it's sort of shocking and a little bit funny when you see what they call clinical quality marijuana. It's basically green dust, and it's infested with molds and pathogens and stuff like that. It's kind of ridiculous. Sue Sisley, when she got the packages of marijuana from NIDA, she pulled sort of an unprecedented stunt, and that she got that marijuana third party tested, and that was really shocking and unusual to the scientific community. And in fact, that's probably one of the main reasons why Johns Hopkins pulled out, is because of her requirement that she know exactly what her patients were getting. And that just wasn't an issue before. Everybody just simply accepted what came from NIDA, and believed what they told them, just swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. And what she did is she went out and tested it, and she found 10 times the amount of molds and fungus in the marijuana as was acceptable under any state program. She also found that the marijuana was testing a couple percent lower than what they had advertised to her, and they advertised it not even as very high potency cannabis. It was, I think it's somewhere in the range of like in the low teens for the high THC group, and it's somewhere around 9% for the 1-to-1 group. I think it's something like that. That was what they were advertising, but it was testing much lower than that. And that's like a variance that is not acceptable also in civilian research laboratories. NIDA itself was not meeting any of the requirements that commercial entities have to meet right now. They're providing completely virtually unusable marijuana. The amount of clinical effect that might come from these strains of marijuana that they provided to Sue Sisley, it might be so small that that there might not be clinical effect. And honestly, a lot of us have to sit there and wonder, is that on purpose? Are they trying to screw the study up? It certainly seems like it, but they'll protest up and down all day long that they're not trying to slow down research or anything like that. But we know what the federal government's like.
So obviously, if she had access to more quality or better quality marijuana, the study could move forward a lot faster than it is.
Correct. And actually, this year, I testified on a bill, and it was to establish a new kind of license here in Colorado, whereby a company can get a license under a research and development grant or a research and development license, and then what they will do is they will produce marijuana in order to use in clinical studies. So we tried to address that issue. However, I still don't think, because most national clinical studies are regulated by the federal government and they have to go to a federal IRB, institutional review board, in order for approval, this may not really truly affect the quality of research done in the United States. It might affect a few small studies here in Colorado, but really we're just trying to turn the screws, crank up the pressure, on the federal government, and let them know that we're not going to back down. We're going to keep fighting for scientific freedom, and we're going to keep fighting for the individual rights of people here in America.
Well, that's a great fight to be fighting. What
Yeah,
are
I
oh,
wouldn't have it any other way.
Absolutely. What are some of the common symptoms of PTSD or some of the symptoms you've experienced?
Oh my God. I've had a rough day rough night last night. Sleeplessness is a big one. Uh, Anxiety attacks. Sometimes your responses to the emotions that go through you is a little bit paradoxical. Sometimes you can respond with rage. Um, uh, yeah, nightmares. Sometimes really disturbing stuff. Um, uh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. You take your time. I appreciate you talking about this.
I think really probably the number one symptom of PTSD that's never talked about is something I had for a very long time, and it was the most debilitating thing uh, that I had, and that was isolation. I isolated myself. I think there was a period of 6 months to a year where I basically didn't come out of my house. I didn't come out of my bedroom, and that harmed me on a level that nothing else ever really did. That isolation from human contact and pulling away from my family, um, and really, I guess there's some confounding factors in there because a lot of these guys that have PTSD and girls too, they're on a lot of medications, and these medications they make life not worth living, and you don't want to interact with anybody. You don't want to do anything. You just want to hide, and you want to die. And
And
I
you,
think that's probably the number one symptom that a lot of people don't talk about with PTSD.
well, it's definitely something that should be made aware of. The
Yeah.
what are the benefits of using medical marijuana as opposed to traditional prescription medication?
Oh boy. Well, when I started using cannabis here in Colorado, I tried it actually back in North Carolina, where I come from. I tried it there for the first time since military service, and it, I took a few puffs and I was just sitting there waiting, and I was waiting and waiting. I was like, "Come on now, are you going to do anything?" And what happened was sort of surprising. I slipped off into a daydream, and I hadn't just done that. I hadn't just daydreamed for years, years, and I was just lost in a thought. There was no thought. There was no looking for where the next threat was going to come from. There was no peering out the windows. Um, there was no rage. There was no anxiety. It was just me being lost, musing in a thought, And uh, when I finally actually snapped back into my body, and then the hypervigilance started up again. I I recognized that my brain could recognize that. Holy crap, man! You just had a good 5-10 minutes of peace, genuine peace, and it remembered that and wanted to seek that out again. So I determined right then that I had to move to Colorado. I had to move to a legal state, and we moved here. Within a week, I had my medical card, and I started using medical cannabis. But the uh, the effects sort of, it seems like it takes a while for it to start having an effect. I mean, it does have an immediate effect, but the benefits continued to manifest themselves over the course of a year and a half, 2 years. Actually, I mean, I don't know. I would say certain benefits are still manifesting in me, um, you know, 4 years later. But it allowed me to get off the medications. That's the number one thing. When I got here to Colorado, uh, I asked my VA doctor here when I switched my care over here to Colorado. I asked my primary care physician, what do you think about medical marijuana? This is Colorado, please. Like, I'm just being honest here, man. I just want to talk to you about this thing. And to my surprise, he was not dismissive. He wasn't uh, contemptuous. He just said, "Listen, if you haven't tried it yet, you probably should, but I can't give you any opiate narcotics while you're on it." I was like, "That's fine. Take me off," because he didn't really know that I had already been using medical marijuana for about a couple weeks. But so I was just like, "Yeah, that's fine. Take me off the opiates." And it was really hard there for a short period of time. But I'll tell you what, I never looked back. It's the best thing I ever did. Um, and what that did is it started sort of an avalanche. Every single time I go in to see my VA doctor, I'd go down the list of medications, and I was on a ton, anywhere between 18 and 20 any given month. And I just started crossing off medications and started marking out dosages and having them. Okay, cut me in half on that. Get rid of this one. Let's go ahead and take me down to a third of this one. How about that? And my doctors um, got really scared, I think, about how reckless I was being in reducing my medications. But I knew what I was doing, and I knew that I had to get off the medications if I was going to be okay in the end. And so I just kept pushing forward, and it took me a long time to get off all those medications, close to a year and a half. And as the medications peeled off, these layers of this wall that I had put up in between myself and the world, they started peeling off too. And I started coming alive. I started developing a relationship with my wife and my kids again. God, my kids, beautiful kids.
How many kids do you have?
Two, two, two boys, 5 and 10 now.
I'm sure
And
they're
when
very
they,
proud of you.
yeah, I wasn't sure that they were gonna be. Dad's a marijuana user, um, but my oldest son, he just says, "I have my dad back."
That's
And
fantastic.
yeah, he's completely turned off by the idea of smoking pot or anything. Like, nothing that I have done is gonna um is gonna increase the chances that he smokes pot. I mean, the kid is positively aghast at the idea, but he is very interested in it as a treatment for various different maladies. And for that reason, he always asks me questions. I grow both hemp and marijuana. I grow hemp outdoors in my front yard, and I grow marijuana inside. And he's always out there in my hemp garden, and he's asking questions about the plants. He's really interested in it, but his he absolutely detests the smell. And he's just like, it stinks, I don't like it, it's disgusting. So anyway, yeah, my kids, I've managed to develop a relationship with them again, and that just by itself is that's worth everything. It's worth more than anything to me.
Absolutely. You had mentioned that you got your medical card when you moved to Colorado. What is the current process for a veteran to be approved for medical marijuana?
For medical marijuana, you have to have one of the qualifying conditions, and there's a list of qualifying conditions. Colorado's list is actually pretty sparse. There are some other states that have far more qualifying conditions on it than we do. And actually, not a single condition has been added to Colorado's registry since it was established in 2000. And except for this year. This year is the first year we have added a condition to it. And finally, because of my own actions and the actions of a few other people in this community, PTSD is going to be the next qualified condition in the state of Colorado.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Thanks.
That's a big step. Are certain strains of medical marijuana more effective than others for treating PTSD?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I was treating a number of different things when I got here. I was treating, my injuries, and I was treating the PTSD too. Um, the injuries really, uh, they respond to a variety of different things, but PTSD is kind of it's a little bit touchy. Guys with a lot of anxiety, there are some very high THC strains, a lot of sativas, and even some indicas, tell you the truth, that will trigger anxiety and sort of send people into a bit of an episode. And when I first got here, it was trial and error. But thankfully, I had a bit of a background in neuroscience. I went to school for a few years, took a lot of behavioral neuroscience classes, and studied a lot of psychopharmacology in my off time. And that gave me a pretty good basis through which to go through all of the various different strains that I was trying, and try to seek the components that were working for me. And I get stuff tested, and terpenes, cannabinoids, and what I found out very quickly was that the very high THC strains weren't really all that good for me. I needed something that maintained the high level of psychoactivity that THC had, but I needed something that would cut the anxiety a little bit. And I know that some people, when they use some of the African strains, like the East African strains that have a lot of higher levels of THCV in them, some people actually get more anxious, but some people it has the opposite effect. It actually calms the anxiety while amping up the psychoactivity at the same time. And that's kind of an unusual combination. What I found is that's exactly the case for me. I responded to THCV very well, and I started seeking out a lot of East African land races, things like I started out with Durban poison, which is not even really a land race anymore. But I started working my way up the east side of Africa, and I got some Malawi, and then some seeds gathered from Tanzania, and eventually I found an individual that was extremely high in THCV that I could use for myself. It wasn't particularly high in THC. It was almost a 1-to-1 ratio, believe it or not. It was a complete outlier in the population. It was close to 7%, 7%, which is common for many land races. They top out at around 14% total cannabinoids. But that's initially what I started using for my PTSD. But eventually, I found that I needed some other strains too. And I think that honestly, most people that are medical marijuana patients, they don't just need one strain. They need a variety of strains. Most everyone that uses cannabinoids as medicine are going to need more than one. So I started seeking out CBD strains because I got a hemp license the very next year. The beginning of 2014 was my first year growing hemp. And I started picking out a lot of high CBD strains and trying to figure out how to breed my hemp for higher levels of CBD also. And I've eventually got some of my hemp, at least one breeding group, it's up to about 12, 13%. And but there are some like legitimate marijuana strains which test. The only difference between hemp and marijuana is the THC level. THC tops out in hemp at 0.3%. And with marijuana, it goes from zero point 0.3 to everything to as high as it can go. Um, so hemp is specifically defined as any cannabis plant that has less than 0.3% THC. It can have any number of other cannabinoids in it, but it must have less than 0.3% THC. So some of the high CBD strains that I was using, R4, my R4 tested at like 18.6, I think, and 0.8% THC. So it was 0.8% THC, still extremely low, not psychoactive at all, really, but it had extremely high levels of CBD, and that really helped me out. It was R4 is an actual marijuana plant because it does test above 0.3% THC. And R4, I tried Charlotte's Web, which is the famous strain that little Charlotte Figgy here used to help quell her seizures. And I tried ACDC, which is about 20% CBD and 1% THC. All of these strains originally were legitimate marijuana strains that tested above 0.3%. I know that Charlotte's Web has since been bred down to a level underneath 0.3%, and there's a couple other strains that have been bred down. Like Haley's Hope is another one that was started and crafted by a guy I know here in Colorado, Jason Cranford. He's helped a lot of kids with it, a lot of kids here, and it tests very high in CBD, but it also tests below 0.3% THC. So when you look at the plant, honestly, it looks just like marijuana. There's really no difference in the way that it grows, its structure, and it's grown in all female plots too, so that you can maximize the amount of medicine you get. And these strains, they're they're so similar to marijuana. The only real difference is a legal one, and that's the one that defines it as hemp is anything below 0.3% THC, and marijuana is anything above. So anyway, that's really where we're kind of going with hemp, breeding hemp, and breeding cannabis in general. I think that eventually these hemp fields that you see around here, they're going to eventually lean more towards the all-female type of medicinal hemp. And there's a lot of circles that medicinal hemp is sort of a bad word. Everybody likes medical marijuana, but nobody likes medicinal hemp. And I think it's mainly because it's a competition issue. Medicinal hemp, if I'm growing a field of 10,000 plants on 5 acres, say, and those 10,000 plants are all female and they're all producing high CBD medication, then it puts a serious dent into the marijuana industry's pocket. So I think that in a lot of ways, the marijuana industry is going to start trying to fight the hemp industry. But tell you the truth, it's a losing battle. Hemp will win out.
So it's interesting. It's like the pharmaceutical companies fighting the medical marijuana industry, and now medical marijuana industry wants to fight the hemp industry.
Exactly, and it's really, I think it's a losing battle on both fronts. The pharmaceutical industry will lose to medical marijuana, and eventually medical marijuana will lose to medicinal hemp. The hemp laws are really what marijuana should be grown under, and this is the reason why I harp on natural rights all the time, because for me, one really basic expression of what natural rights means is nature's not a crime. Nothing nature does is a crime. If I can't stick a seed in the ground and watch it grow, I'm not free, period. And in America, this is supposed to be the land of freedom. We're supposed to have inalienable rights, natural rights. So to me, the restriction on plant count, the number of plants you can have, the amount of plant product you can have on hand, it's all sort of nonsense. It doesn't make any legitimate constitutional sense. So, we try to stand up for natural rights in any way we can, and we are pressing for eventual descheduling, complete descheduling of the cannabis plant in all of its forms, not just hemp, but marijuana too, because marijuana is a completely arbitrary and artificial classification. There is no biological classification for marijuana. There's no distinction. It's all cannabis. So I think that eventually the hemp legal model is going to be what all marijuana is grown under. There's going to be licenses issued, and you can grow as many plants as you want to on a given plot of land. And eventually, that's going to be the only thing that makes the medicine affordable and available and accessible to every single American in the United States.
What is your method of using medical marijuana?
Oh gosh, when I started, I was trying everything. I didn't really have a strategy at first. It was just I just tried carpet bombing with as much stuff as I could, and I just took strain after strain, and I would smoke, I would eat it in baked brownies or other edibles, and I would make oil that I could take in little pills, or just actually squirt it directly into my mouth. And eventually I got into extracts. Believe it or not, extracts, just commonly known as what you call dabs. They have a bit of a bad reputation in the United States, and it's completely undeserved. People associate dabs with this recreational lifestyle where people are just gobbling up big giant gram dabs, and in some ways they're right. That's a little bit excessive, but it's not my job to regulate their use, and I don't really believe it's the law's job to do that either. But dabs are actually one of the most useful rescue tools that are out there. If you can get somebody to take a dab real quick when they're in crisis, some kind of crisis, it doesn't matter what kind of crisis. I've seen people doubled over in pain from Crohn's disease is a big it's a big issue that a lot of people use cannabis to treat, and Crohn's pain can go away almost instantaneously. You
Wow.
get a dab into somebody, and it's like boom, gone. And it's exactly the same way with many PTSD states. If you are extremely anxious or you're enraged, then if I get a nice 1-to-1 extract, something that's 50% THC and 50% CBD, I can calm you down in about a minute and a half flat. Most people. And it's not exactly like people will take a dab, and they'll still be at very high amped intensity, and just within a minute or two, you can just feel the energy slipping out of their voice, and you can feel them starting to come back down to earth and get more grounded and start talking to you like a human being again.
That's very interesting.
It
Have
can be miraculous.
Have you ever used the vaporizer for your medical marijuana before?
I did. I used that exclusively when I first got here. I didn't smoke marijuana when I first got here, except it was like every once in a while when I didn't have a vaporizer. I would pack a bowl and I'd smoke a bowl. But when I first got here, I used a vaporizer almost exclusively. It was a little model called Vapier, I think, and it served me well for a long time. But eventually, when I started getting into extracts are naturally evaporated. When you take and a dab or an extract hit off of a water pipe, um, none of that is actually combusted material. You heat up a surface to, a few hundred degrees, and then you drop in a small amount of extract, and this amount of extract completely evaporates. The process of extracting, you know, um, dabs or oil from plants is one in which you get rid of all of the components of a plant that burn, that actually combust. So when you torch a lighter to a plant, it's going to burn. But this oil, what it does is it simply evaporates and it turns into a mist, which you can barely see, and sometimes you can barely smell. But this is the essential essence of the plant, really, and it gives you everything that the plant gives you without any of the carcinogens or the particulate matter that can clog your lungs and cause bronchitis or whatever the heck you might be worried about with cannabis. Whatever you might be worried about with cannabis, I guarantee you we can get around your issues.
Excellent. I also understand you're a part of the film From Shock to Awe. Can you tell us about this film?
Yeah, Janine Sager and Luke Cote, man, gosh, they're awesome people. And I'm really honored to have been a part of the film. Uh, they've been enormously helpful. So they came up with the idea of From Shock to Awe. I think it was in 2014 when I first met them, and they were just sort of forming the idea then, and they uh, they wanted to follow veterans who were using cannabis and ayahuasca and MDMA. And at first, I I thought I might be part of the cannabis group because I helped organize the the bus trip that went across the United States to go to DC. Weed for Warriors had a it's called the Cannonball Run, and they took a bus from California and they took it to DC, and they poured out a whole big box of pills in front of the White House, and basically took activism, sort of like I'd been doing for a long time, to a national stage. And so Janine and Luke followed that, and they also got into touch with a an MDMA researcher here in Colorado, Saj Razvi, with Trauma Dynamics, and he was using MDMA to treat various different veterans and other people with PTSD. They followed him for a short period of time, and then they took myself and one other veteran. His name is Mike Cooley, awesome guy. We went to a ayahuasca church, and I'm not even sure if I should say where we went to. I don't know if we should do this because it was within the United States. But
Ah, no need then.
so me and Mike Cooley went to a an ayahuasca church, and we undertook ayahuasca for the first time. I gotta say, I sought out ayahuasca because cannabis. I had been using cannabis for a long time, and I had made great strides. I had made incredible strides towards getting better, but I feel like I had hit a bit of a wall. Like cannabis just wasn't doing it for me anymore. It wasn't enough to get me back to the way I was, or even better. Because I knew I could be better. So I sought out ayahuasca. If I was going to change myself, I needed to undergo a transformative experience. And ayahuasca for me, it was that experience that I was looking for. It I don't want to ruin the movie too much, but the very first night I had an intense release of a lot of emotion that had been tied up for a very long time with deployment, military service, and getting over it. Um, and the following ceremonies afterwards that weekend just solidified everything. And since that time, that occurred. I think it was April of last year, of 2016. That was my first ayahuasca experience, and since that period of time, I think my personal development has really just gone into overdrive. Um, I've started coming out of my shell so much more than even before. I had already come out of my shell considerably before with cannabis. You know, I started lobbying, doing public stuff, trying to do public events, and now it's just overdrive. It's uh I live much of my life publicly now, and I try to do it for the benefit of other veterans around me. My organization, our motto is we build communities of veterans so that they can heal, find their voice, and then change the world. Because we are a political action organization. But the idea is to build these communities. These communities are first. It's the only way that you're going to get a veteran to come out of his basement, to come out of his bedroom, to come out of his bathroom, start integrating into society again. You got to integrate them with other veterans, and you got to integrate them with civilians too. That's really what we need. Is we need to be taught how to interact with real society again. So, you know, we build these communities in which veterans can come to, and they can always have a place to go to that's not going to judge them, no matter what happens, no matter what kind of bad reaction they have. Heck, I've had to literally walk outside. I had a vet come into one of my very first events, and he walked into my first event, and he had a panic attack. He walked outside. I knew he was having a panic attack. I could tell. I've had this before. So I walked outside, and I was like, dude, you all right? He said, I just need a minute, man. And he was like shaking, and he was almost about to cry. And I just grabbed his hand and held his hand for about a minute. And it eventually got cold outside, and he was like, okay, man, I'm ready to go back inside. Thanks. You know, and it doesn't matter what sort of reaction people have. It doesn't matter whether it's rage. I don't care. If you want to get mad at somebody, get mad at me. Don't get mad at some of these other civilians. Don't get mad at somebody in, you know, the grocery store. Don't do that. Get mad at me. I can take it. I know what's going on in your head. So please, absolutely take it out on me. I'd rather you do that than any other thing. And then after you're done and you cool down, come back. Just come back. Come back to the circle. Join the crowd again, because we're not going to judge you. We're not going to care. All we care is that you come out again. And I think that's really been what I rely on for the success of this model. You know, is just these strong community bonds between veterans. Ian actually is one of the guys who said this for the first time that I remember, and he said the best medicine is veteran love. And it's true. It's absolutely true. When you simply give that unconditional love to another human being, another veteran, they respond to it, and they come out of their shell. They start seeking you out. They start trying to associate. They start trying to get back into the world again. That sort of that love, that unconditional love, it wakes them up inside, you know, their soul, and it makes them realize, holy crap, man, the world out here is not all evil. It's not all bad. It's not all stuff that I need to be afraid of and I need to be looking for threats. There's actually people out here who have my six, and that I can count on at any given time to drop everything and just be like, hey, man, what's wrong, man? What do you need? So you know, that's really what the core of Veterans for Natural Rights is creating communities where we can heal. And once people heal, inevitably we start talking about legalities and why we're not free to use this medication for ourselves, why we're not free to use cannabis, why we're not free to use ayahuasca, why we're not free to use psilocybin mushrooms, why we're not free to use MDMA, why we're not free to use all of these other Schedule 1 drugs that just happen to be extremely useful and far more useful than any pharmaceutical substance that's on the market right now for treating PTSD. All of these drugs are far more potent in their clinical reaction. It's amazing the sort of transformative experiences that people can have. Ayahuasca, in some ways, I've heard it said before that ayahuasca can be compared to 5 years of psychiatric treatment in one night. So imagine having the sort of emotional deep breakthroughs that you get over the course of 5 years of treatment, and imagine that happening in all in one night.
Speeds up the
And
process quite a lot, eh?
yeah, it's sort of like it's the short ticket to success. I kind of liken it to I see a lot of people walking around every day, and everybody in American society, they're belly aching about all the crap that's happened to them in their lives. Oh, my daddy beat me up, and this happened to me when I was young, and blah blah blah. And we're carrying around all this baggage all the time, and it's heavy. It's really heavy, and people complain about it all the time. They're just bitching and moaning constantly. And I think of them sort of as people who are stopping into the grocery store every single day and picking up a bag of groceries, but then they have to walk to their ninth floor walk up, you know, and they're just belly aching and crying the whole way. My God, these groceries are so heavy. My God, it's so hard to do this every single day. Why do I have to do this every day? And what I like in ayahuasca too is an elevator right by the stairs that they had just never seen before. It's like, hey guys, quit bitching. Take the elevator. It's too easy, you know?
What is the release date for this movie From Shock to Awe?
I think it's somewhere around October. I think that is their tentative release. Originally, it was next year, but I think they've sped up post production. They've got all of the film they really need, I think, at this point, and they're in post production phases. So I think that they're going to try to wrap up around October, somewhere around there, and hopefully we'll start to see screenings domestically at that time.
Well, I really appreciate you talking with us today. We'd love to meet up again and follow the progress with Veterans for Natural Rights. Do you have anything else you want to add today, Matthew?
No, sorry, I'm a little bit scatterbrained after last night, but
Yeah,
um,
it's completely
I'll
understandable.
I'll leave the door open. Please come back and interview me at any time.
Well, we look forward to that. We at Namaste Technologies are dedicated to helping our veterans. We're offering our veterans discounts on our products, and we will be donating a portion of our proceeds to veterans charities. Matthew, Kahl, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today, and
Thanks a lot, Jesse.
look forward to speaking with you again.
You too, brother.
Bye bye.